Hello, I am Radagast with Global Mission of Peace TV's Mystic View, and I am joined, as always, by Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hello, everyone.
And this is Mystic View number 39. Do you know what you want? So this show kind of came about as a good little conversation that Shelley and I had pre-show. And I think we're at an important time on the planet. Standing Rock is a huge summit meeting occurring right now, in my opinion. And, where ostensibly it's, the First Nations people, but this has become multinational and multiracial, as many of the Native American prophecies have stated when they speak of Rainbow Tribe. And then we have the election of Donald Trump, which has sent shockwaves through the world. Matter of fact, I found out that apparently we were on DEFCON 3, which is definition of conflict or something, I forget. But in other words, so it had gone up to 3 or down to 3. I think 5 is the safest, and going 1 is like imminent nuclear war or something. And we had been at 3 for the past couple of weeks, and I heard that it has now been lowered to 5. And I can't imagine it didn't have something to do with the fact that President Putin and President Trump had a conversation saying, so what, the Russian people and the American people are going to get together. Obviously, their governments will be working together, and we're going to crush ISIS together. And so then we have the defense condition. That's it, defense condition. Get to basically, it's going to be a sunny day. So there's a lot going on. But I think what you and I want to focus on is, do we know what we want? Because a lot of the things that are happening have a ray of sunshine in them, in my opinion. And I'd like to think that we are waking up, and as we wake up, we are due to quantum field effects, our observer status changes, and so the world we observe kind of joins us in a more holistic view. Okay, that's my intro. Why don't you go?
That's a wonderful observation, speaking of the observer effect, and that's exactly what we need. But that's a really loaded question. Do you know what you want? Because this comes back to people's values, and what is your authentic sovereign value, as opposed to what has been conditioned by society or by fear. All right, so there we are, right there, named it. Straight out of the gate. But whatever that is, whatever our approach is, the sense that we're doing it from a place of love, I think, is really the bottom line. So maybe that's the place to begin with your perception, whether it's with regard to Trump buddying up with Putin, which can only be good. Look at friends around the world. I'm all for that.
Yeah, and I really think that part of knowing what we want is to kind of allow ourselves to be in a more neutral place,
balanced place.
Because when we start defining ourselves as liberal or conservative or Democratic or Republican or this or that, it's hard for bliss to happen because it's hard to share. And often what happens is, when you identify with a label, there are people who tend to administer those labels and kind of release the talking points that are affiliated with those labels. So they end up kind of almost in a mind control kind of way telling you what you should want. They couch it in language that you want it. They kind of present, this is what you want. They present it as if you've already spoken and they're just giving it back to you. But in most cases, people haven't spoken. They're given the word and then they speak. And this happens in almost any situation where somebody identifies with a label, identifies with an administrative aspect of that label, and then the thinkers of that administration release their interpretation of what it seems that they're saying that you want. But is it really in a response, or are they creating a response?
Yes, exactly. And so if we were to think about that response and the polarity, and is that really coming from your sovereign being? Are you practicing the Dharma, in uncertain times? So do we think it's uncertain times right now? Or somebody might have had greater uncertainty 5 years ago? Whatever it is, thoughts are merely thoughts. It's what action we put or apply to this. So anybody can have thoughts. That would be a great show too. Where do thoughts come from? Because they aren't even necessarily your own. There's kind of a soup of thoughts that by a match of frequency you can become aware of. But really, what actions are you taking on the thoughts that you want to call your own? Do you know what your own values really are? How do you even determine what your values are? I mean, we can go to something generic like okay, peace, that's an obvious. But what does peace look like in your life, and what actions have you taken to actually back up your thoughts? What actions have you really taken to create peace, as opposed to something that would lead to further duality?
And I think also central to so much of this is what freedom really is. I mean, let's take, a kind of a hot button topic, vaccinations. So usually that is framed in, are you pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine? And each camp, depending on how they are, has their talking points. How about if you have health freedom and each side does as they see fit?
Well, what is the value that we're sharing there? That's what I think what you're bringing into perspective here is what would that shared value look like? And that's something both camps can support.
Right, which is freedom. And in this particular instance, it's health freedom. Because I've seen people really energize people when they try to tell people who want to vaccinate their children that they're wrong to do so. For me, that abrogates their freedom. So for me, I just want freedom where I can choose to do I have the freedom to treat my body as I see fit. And I also see like a canceling agent where the one kind of counter argument sometimes from the pro-vaccine side would be, well, we can't have your children running around unvaccinated because they're a threat to our children. And of course, and of course, the answer to that is, what if vaccines are effective, then your children are safe. And so and I don't hear that. I hear that often saying that they want all children vaccinated so their children are safe. Well, that's why you vaccinated your children. So I mean, to me, neither side has an argument for the other side to do anything other than they feel is the right thing to do for their children, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's much easier if we separate out the right and the wrong and just come down to what's our objective here? What are we really trying to create? What's our shared value? And that we're operating from a place of integrity and honor with what we expect for ourselves as much as what we expect from anybody else, and really providing a space to allow for that. So we can honor your perspective and honor your choices, but also honor my own at the same time. And ultimately, we want to create that where we're supporting each other. This can be done. It's amazing to me that this is a concept that we always think we have to vote, Republican, or, like that there's always a polar choice here. There's not. We need to see the whole picture. 360 degrees exists. It's not just left and right.
Right. And it's really in the field. I mean, like, as I kind of, my new thing about the polls is the polls are like goal posts on a football field.
Mm.
And the game doesn't happen at the goal posts. The game happens on the field. So, and I really would like, that works with opposing teams getting away from the poles and coming into the field and engaging with each other. But for me, the ultimate goal is where we all decide we don't even like being on different teams, that we could be on one team, because freedom allows for that. But of course, one of the things that's important that often gets dropped out, with freedom comes responsibility. There are just certain ways of being free that might actually impinge in certain circumstances on others. So beginning, but that comes down to agreements. That comes down to dialogue. Comes down to sharing space where space has to be shared.
And a really simple way to do that is what you mentioned a few minutes ago, is just being in the field, removing ourselves from the polarized perceptions and enter the field, right? That's what Eckhart Tolle taught us. What's happening in your now, right now, present moment.
Mm-hmm.
I bet we don't need to have all those fears driving our actions, fears of something potential maybe happen in the future. You know what? Let's deal with the reality of what the experience is right now.
Yeah, and speaking of Eckhart Tolle, I mean, he kind of brought up what he termed the pain body.
Ah, yes.
And that is something we all want to be aware of and in touch with, so that we're not acting from that place. Because then it tends to be reactive.
That's right. And I think there's so much wisdom just in starting to recognize your own pain body and see where you do get triggered. And then that can lead to so many aha revelations that you learn so much about yourself. And that's really the place we're at on the planet. We're learning about ourselves. We're reclaiming that God spark within us, our sovereign God spark. It's like we're realizing we can actually create a much better world just by being honest with each other and operating from that shared space. And really, the sharing is what's essential, to have compassion.
Yes.
Even if that means you have to share within yourself. You spoke about teams. I love that analogy. But a lot of people really like the excitement and the drive that comes with being on a team, but that doesn't have to negate your ability. We can have still teamwork where you're specializing in something.
I mean, I enjoy volleyball. Volleyball is one of the things I like to play most. And all I ever really want on my volleyball team is somebody who can, when the ball comes to them, their hands are actually together so that the ball hits their hands and doesn't just fly through them. I ask for that tiny bit of ability to make contact with the ball most of the time. But I mean, I've been on, we used to have whole afternoons of volleyball. And, it was a bunch of stoners. I didn't get high, so I played in every game. Other people took time out to go get high and stuff. I was in game after game after game. So I was on teams that won, and I was on teams that lost. And I didn't care. I mean, we had friendly banter and taunting of each other. And I had taunts whether I was losing or winning. I mean, again, my wit, it's kind of hard to suppress my wit. So no matter whether I was losing so badly or winning so well, I found humor in every moment and had a great time. And
that is great medicine.
Yeah.
Humor for our planet. My kids come up with all kinds of wonderful alternatives to fighting, to create a a shared perspective where everybody gets to win. And this is something that is possible. You know, we can have specialists in terms of focus, areas where you can specialize in your area of focus without having to choose a side or making somebody wrong so you get to be right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's embedded in our DNA. Every one of us has that ability. We already have the perfect blueprint within us. We just need to wake that thing up. It's a question, how does the flower of life speak through you? How does this want to come out? How does this want to be expressed through you?
Well, I agree with you. It is in our DNA to cooperate. And that is why I think so much effort is put into social engineering.
Yeah, true.
Because they need to insert something to create to break that natural cooperation with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so they find the little things that ordinarily we just, oh yeah, we agree to disagree on that. That's how we would normally do it. We agree to disagree on certain things because we really just want to get on. And a lot of that stuff we disagree on is small. And then you have social engineering come along and start telling us that certain differences are important. And magically another side arises to say that just the opposite is more important. Mm-hmm. And then they pull their teams to them. But the whole purpose isn't so they each have a team, it's so that we aren't together. And that's the core of social engineering.
Yes, and that is the fact, is that it's engineered. It's not natural. You know, once you've had the flavor, once you've had the experience of compassion and sharing, you don't go back. There is no turning back once you've seen how beautiful life can be.
Yeah.
There is no turning back. And it doesn't matter. It's not about making somebody wrong so you can be right. You know, there's joy in we're all one. So if the other side is having success, hallelujah, that means so am I. And I didn't actually have to do it. They did all the work.
And, you know, in certain instances, I see a lot of organized religion as unfortunately, so a lot of it operates as social engineering. This is not to take away from the rich mystic quality in all of them, because that's why, to me, the reason why they even have held together is there is a lot of riches to be pulled from them. There's a wealth of wisdom and love to be pulled from them. But at the operative level,
and this is why you need to let God or the great creator or pure source energy speak through you, speak to you, instead of putting somebody else up on a pedestal to interpret God's alleged word. You know, that's what I'm saying. God's word is in your DNA. You just need to listen.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's all there.
I mean, I had made the joke, and I don't mean, you know, not to sound blasphemous to anybody, and I was sharing with you pre-show. It's almost as if when people start resorting to books to tell me what God wants, when God is speaking to me while you're telling me what a book says, it's to me, God's written word is almost as if God is dead. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, what? I mean, God's not available to me now, so he had to leave a last will and testament. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about some of the stuff that is extracted and then kind of laid on people. And I know my own experience. I mean, the reason why I can even believe in a God is because I experienced God in real time. I didn't have to pluck God out of a book.
Right. Well, those books might help to serve as a reminder or a little prompt in some ways. I mean, it's a lot like the White Buffalo Cap woman leaving us the peace pipe, for example. That peace pipe was to hold the frequency until, for a long time, that's all we had was this little shard of a memory. But the more you honor the tradition, or the more you honor, actually, it's the love within the tradition, that's what brings it alive.
I agree, and it actually pulls us back to our point about freedom and responsibility. Because every single one, let's say the three great Abrahamic religions, okay? Of course, they have many sects, but, you know, we're talking about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All three of those branches have their mystics.
Mm-hmm.
All of the mystics of those branches understand that those books have liabilities, but they also understand that the freedom that comes with really being in gnosis, in contact, once you kind of really connect with God and understand your sovereignty and the freedom, you also understand the responsibility. Matter of fact, you become a co-partner with spirit. In other words, you can only operate with spirit. You can't operate against spirit. But until you've made that contact, you could run amok. So I think what happens is when the mystics arise out of those traditions, they realize that until you've made that mystic connection, maybe it's best we leave this stuff in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I've shared it before. I shared it with somebody, and it was, from what I know of, it's a Sufi saying.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Sufis because that's exactly where my mind goes.
And supposedly, you know, during a prayer, and of course for mystics, that's a communion with God. And apparently, this particular mystic was maybe doing some things that were not exactly in alignment. So in his prayer, God goes, "You are not being the holy man that you represent yourself from. You do some things that are not so holy, and I'm going to put it into the hearts of other people that you are not who you appear to be." To which the mystic says, "If you do that, I will tell everybody how forgiving and merciful you are." To which God responded, "Let us both keep our secret."
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, but you know, that reminds me of your experience too, feeding the skunks and the opossum and everything. How much of your projection is affecting not just your perception, but the energy field that you're actually operating in? I don't know if there's a synopsis that you want to.
Yeah, well, I guess I could kind of just, you know, how sometimes through completely not being moved by anything mischievous,
Mm-hmm.
how just being kind of exploring, sometimes, you know, you'll touch the poison ivy and prick the thorn and step on a bee's nest, or, you know, a yellow jacket, because they live in the grounds. So I need to pick the right species.
Yeah.
But last night, just so that you kind of know, I went out and I feed 6 stray cats, and I feed them in a bowl, and I also lay out a whole mound across the blacktop. So there's 2 different, because there's 6 cats. So this way here, there's no need for people to do their alpha routine. When it's a long line, everybody can just kind of pull up and eat. So I go out last night, and usually I go out because there's usually 1 or 2 skunks. And I've also been out there where a skunk is eating from the bowl and the cats are eating from the line. I mean, you know, 3 feet from each other. No problems at all. The skunks and the cats get along fine. So I go out last night and I see 2 new things. First of all, I see a real little skunk. I mean, this skunk was a little bit bigger than a large kitten. And it was really quite cute. But there was this big opossum. I mean, so I'm looking at him, go, is that really an opossum? I mean, it had all the morphology, but I had never seen an opossum that big. I've seen many live and on the side of the road opossums. I had never seen an opossum this big. So anyway, and I often will talk to the skunks. I mean, when they, especially across the way, I don't, but often when I open my door, there'd be a skunk in front of me, and I go, "Hello, skunk," in a nice voice, and they would see me, and then they would go, "Okay, time to make a little distance between us. Everything is fine." So anyway, but I really wanted to get a better look at the opossum. So I go over, I go, "Hey, are you a possum?" So it hears my voice, turns towards me, but in typical fashion, when you kind of let them know you're there, it walked away from the food. So prior to my interfering, which is what it ultimately boiled out, the possum was eating at the line, the skunk was eating at the bowl, and they were completely ignoring each other. When the possum moved, boy, it was a big possum. And when the possum moved away, for some reason, the skunk took notice of it and kind of like, I don't know if it was nipping at its tail or something, or maybe it was just being playful like kittens were. But it started to kind of bug the opossum. And they had a little bit of a standoff. I was watching the little skunk never turned around to spray it, but I smelled in the air that it had released a little something. And so they had a little thing, and then finally, I guess the possum finally said, enough with you, and it went over to the bowl this time to eat. And the skunk comes over and kind of tries to move the possum away. And the possum has like 7 times the weight easily on the skunk. I mean, it's like, it's like a giant, it's like David and Goliath. And so they end up kind of like contending for the bowl. And then I finally realized that when I came out prior to my intruding into their reality, when I was pure observer, I was seeing peace. Each one of them was at their own place. They were basically ignoring each other. When I spoke and when I interjected only with the energy of my voice, which is still inserting energy, the power of the word, and created movement, and then the skunk kind of badgered them, and then they were, so I realized that I was almost watching the drama unfold, and I realized that in my own head, I'm watching a drama unfold. I was almost a drama had happened, so I'm expecting more drama. My expectation as an observer was feeding what I thought was the resolution that I actually wanted to see. And that's when I realized that if anything was going to get back to normal, I need to go back in the house and stop observing them so they could go back to where they were before I observed them.
I just see so much meaning to be extrapolated from that. I love that story. That's awesome. And also it's really fun that you're feeding the critters. Well, what you said there was the power of the word, and that is such an incredible tool that we can harness right now in every minute that we happen to remember. The power of the word is a fabulous tool, but by speaking or speaking out loud puts action into your thought.
Mm-hmm.
Even the I am, or I am that, I am. Whatever you see that you think is in your values, you could just say out loud, I am that, I am. Mm-hmm. And really, as a world, let's join together in creating what we want. And you know what we have now with Trump, with him being, so really handy with Twitter and Facebook and all that, I think is really opening up the opportunity for people to engage on that social level. And I think we should use word as the valuable tool that it is.
Yes. I think this is the first time, we're at a historical moment where there's actually a chance to have a sitting head of government being able to, in almost basically real time, get the feedback from the people that he said he was going there to represent, rather than the people that surround him and normally get that person's ear. Now, of course, those people that surround him will always have their ear, but how interesting it would be that you're surrounded by whoever they are and whatever value they bring you, and you're also having this other input from the field, from the real world, not from the bubble of the Beltway or Washington, D.C., the little sovereign state, like the City of London and the Vatican. And so this is why what do we want becomes important, because if this is going to be a two-way conversation, and if the conversation coming off the ground towards the White House is going to be important, it would really be nice if we all knew what we wanted. And
yeah, I think we better decide.
And coming to a common dialogue with each other, with actually having checked in with ourselves with what does that world look like, rather than the world that we maybe got from our teachers, from our professors, and from the anchor men and women. There, because we mentioned social engineering. Social engineering is also part of our educational system, and it is part of our media system. Matter of fact, the main job of the media is social engineering, not information.
Right. So with the power of the word, how fun would this be? We could totally reframe all of that social engineering. We could reframe it to something that actually serves the highest good of humanity and the highest good of our planet.
And I really feel we should talk amongst ourselves about what it is we'd like our neighborhoods to look like. And really it kind of comes down to, you know, the people that you can, whose hands you can shake. I mean, the web is great. I mean, we, you know, if you speak French, you can talk to somebody in France. If they speak English, they can talk to you. I mean, really, language is now the only barrier to most of the world.
And it isn't even a barrier. There's technology to erase that barrier.
Google Translate.
Yeah, thin ice, but it's still good if we use it for the highest good.
Mm-hmm. So I just really feel that at this really important time where it's almost like it's like a tipping point. I really think it would help us all to know what we want and to be sourcing what it is we want from ourselves and in dialogue with others, but stop giving away our power for other people to seed us, because that is what they will do. In many ways, when you turn to government to solve your problems, when you turn to others to do your thinking for you, they're only too happy to do so. And they won't just figure out your problems. They'll tell you what your problems are, what you should be concerned. And I just want, if we're going to be bringing issues to our president, they should be issues that we actually experience in real life and not some meme or some kind of social justice that we've been told we must adhere to or we're bad people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we're talking engaging the social tipping point. And is it responsible engagement? You know, have you done your due diligence? If you're gonna be part of that projection that is the tipping point, have you done your due diligence to know what your values really are, and really flesh them out? I mean, it's
the one thing we can all be an expert at is ourselves.
Yeah.
But like, to be an expert at anything, it takes, like you said, due diligence. You actually have to be working with your craft, and turning inward and looking for clarity and looking for that sweet spot, that place of peace, because there is a place of peace within you. To me, that's the God spot. I locate it where my heart is. I mean, when I'm looking for an energetic place to feel that, to focus my energy, I don't focus in my head. I focus in my heart. I don't focus in the pit of my stomach. I focus it in my heart.
And then once you've felt that sweet spot, regardless if it came up because of a conversation or because of your own meditation or however, once you identify that sweet spot, is to just let it ripple out and radiate out and hold that for, you know, however long you're able. If you're at a traffic light, you might be distracted. But
right.
But there's so many tools that we have within us that we can change this in a heartbeat if we were organized, if we were all on the same page. But that's part of it, is to give everybody the space. Our world is 99.99999% space. We can afford to give everybody the space to figure out who they are and what they want, and
right.
And to really allow for everybody to find themselves, to find that pure source within them.
Well, yes, and because I know you and I have a lot in common. One of the things is we're relatively clear because we work on being as clear as we can. And I know I have the experience sometimes when I talk to people Like 1 minute I'm talking to somebody and I really feel like I'm talking to that person. And then I might trip on something that triggers something. And next thing I know, I'm talking to a program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where I actually I no longer feel the words that are coming at me represent the person. I really feel like I've tripped over something, and this kind of program comes in and starts running. The language changes. The language kind of starts resembling something that was loaded in, as opposed to the language formation that I had with somebody moments before when we were actually speaking. Have you experienced that?
Well, what it reminds me of is spending time with my native family, my First Nations family, because there's so much quiet and conversations aren't rushed. And that gives you the time to really stay connected. You know, instead of having to feel like you need to present an opinion and you need to be right and you need to be smart and you need, keeps all this stimulation happening that keeps our brain so very, very occupied that it's seldom we have the opportunity just to go within our own hearts when we're communicating with somebody, because it's kind of perceived like this awkward silence or something, but in other cultures, it's not that way. It's completely acceptable, and a lot of silence is honored. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while I travel with other people, and sometimes there's conversation, and sometimes the conversation breaks down, and I am very comfortable with being quiet without a radio, going down the road in peace. And a lot of people, there are very few people that I have ever ridden in a car with. There's a few, but very few that are actually comfortable in that quiet, as if there's something wrong with quiet.
Right. Well, I think the reason that we have established quite a lot of clarity between us is the peace that exists, and that's has a lot to do with self-acceptance, actually, and not judging yourself. So while we're busy not judging others, we should also be mindful, be not judging ourselves, to realize we are all a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't notice that they're uncomfortable, except that they either go, oh, it's kind of weird, or they suddenly turn on the radio. And especially if they turn it on during a commercial, so, oh God.
Well, I like that you brought that up, because part of what I'd like to see is to be able to reset our balance and go back to what's natural, go back to our natural cycles. And that means altering our music, away from how it was genetically engineered to create that little hiccup so that we're not quite aligned with that resonance. There's quite a bit that we could take onus upon ourselves to do in this way.
Well, that's why Butch and I play in 432.
Yeah.
And we always play in that tuning. And, there are certain people who think that's just a lot of silliness, and they're entitled to, because they can tune whatever they want to, and we tune whatever we want. And I'm not saying anybody should tune any different than they want to tune. Tune however you want. But
but tune your heart. Tune your heart. And the way you tune your heart is by the thoughts that you hold. There's a compression that takes place with every thought that you're having. So if you want to make a mile.
Well, I just think it's, when you look at the history of when the tuning changed, the first country to do that was Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently, then we had Project Paperclip, where we split up the Nazis between ourselves and the then Soviet Union and brought them to our country. And a short while later, we decided to adopt that standard. Yeah. There just seems to be what's called a paper trail from Paperclip.
Well, what we could do is just go back to drumming, back to the heart, right? Heartbeat. If you ever want to provide for yourself a space of peace, you can just tap out a drum beat wherever you're sitting. And that will resonate, that will strengthen your heart and help to put you back in that place of clarity, where you have the opportunity then to choose peace, to choose compassion, because those are the steps that really carry this forward quickly.
Mhm.
Bliss is the fastest. Bliss is the fastest way.
Yes. And I find great bliss in sharing. Sharing is one of the most blissful, I mean, sharing good conversation, just sharing a meal.
Yep.
That is what really it's what it's about. And so that's what we have to, or we are certainly, I don't say we have to, but it seems natural that we should find ways of coming together, because as you mentioned, and as you know, we are naturally communities and people who know how to get along. In almost every instances, the divisions have been inserted from the outside.
I entirely agree. Anybody who has ever shared anything knows the joy that comes from sharing. So, just go throughout your day sharing. It doesn't matter if it's a smile or you give somebody $1. It doesn't matter what it is. But that sharing, that's what fires up your power too. That's what fires up your sovereignty. That's what connects you back to your heart.
Well, I remember one time I was going to have to walk, probably about 20 blocks on a Manhattan street from point A to point B. And this is, my God, this has to be going back to about 1995. And so having worked in Manhattan and walked a lot, I knew that basically you're going to be running into at least one homeless person per block.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you'd have one on one corner and one on the next corner. And then you cross the street and there'd be one on that corner. And, they're all asking for spare change. So this one time I had been particularly well prepared, and I guess I had a roll of about 26 $1 bills. And so, and because I knew I had 20 blocks, and sure enough, just before I got to my last block, because you can have 2 on a block sometimes, I'd given every single person a $1 bill. And then I finally ran out, and just before I got to my destination, and the person said, "Do you have any spare change?" I said, "I have to tell you, when I got out of the subway train, I had $26, and every single person who asked me for change, I gave $1, and now I'm out of them." The person said, "Thank you, and God bless you for everybody you gave $1 for." Not to mention, almost everybody I gave $1 to blessed me. And I remember one time a woman asked, because knowing I was a reverend, she goes, "What does a reverend do to, if reverends bless people?" That was their perception. "What does a reverend do to get blessed?" I said, "This reverend gives money to homeless people, and I get blessed every time."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's a blessing just hearing the story. I felt great just hearing you tell the story. That's a sharing,
Yeah, and the fact that the person who didn't receive was grateful that I had taken care of all the people that I had traveled until I ran out. They weren't like, "Oh, you couldn't say," there was none of that. Like, what about me?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of identified with everybody else who was like them, and being as 26 other people had already received, that was actually, the goodness of people is there. And very often it's when you lose everything that you can regain your humanity. But to me, that there's a beauty in that story, but the real beauty would be, can you imagine that you can come to that same realization without having to sleep on a street corner? Can you imagine being in a really beautiful house or not so beautiful house? But wherever you are, you can come to that same kind of beautiful place where sharing, knowing that other people are happy, that somebody else has benefited, even if you didn't benefit that particular time, that you can celebrate another person's win, another person's getting something without jealousy or envy. And I would really like to think that you do not need to have everything pulled away from you before you come to that realization, because the fact is, most people who get flattened out, they come to that. And I just think go ahead.
I was just going to say that's because they got nothing left to lose. But you know what? If you don't operate from the fear of loss, the fear of separation, you don't ever have to go through those kind of negative experiences. And even if you do, and you're connected with the oneness, it's not the trauma that somebody who's deeply, deeply in fear experiences. You know, the idea is that we raise ourselves up out of fear, and the way to do that is a portal called love. I mean, it's that fast. It's instant. You don't need to take a long journey and learn about it. You can just choose love.
Yeah.
Love is not fear.
And I think that we could close right there.
Alrighty. So just to reframe that, do you really know what you want? Okay, for us, we've established that it's love, but how are we going to do that? How are we going to put action to that?
Yes. Well, to me, some words that I think are kind of synonymous, just love, compassion, wisdom, bliss, sharing.
Sharing.
Yeah, sharing.
That's the fast track.
Yes, it is. No secrets. Privacy, yes. Secrets, no. Okay. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. God bless you all.